Good evening, everybody, on the Learning 321 group. Today, I will be sharing a few thoughts on the subject of great interest to me, focused on sustainability. But because we just had the World Environment Day, I would like to really share few thoughts on the theme of this year's World Environment Day, that is combating plastic pollution. To begin with, I'd like to share the agenda. What is the nature and gravity of the problem? After defining that, we'd like to examine the scale of the crisis and what are the major environmental and health impacts of the plastic pollution. We then move into the Indian scenario and try to see what is happening in India. Also, we'll examine some of the current global initiatives and what are the business solutions and opportunities that we have not only to solve the problem but also create business opportunities. It goes without saying that we need to define some action plan and next steps that we need to take, and I would specifically like to end the presentation with what we are doing in this area. So if we see the current global scenario, it's estimated that about 11 million tons of plastic waste leaks into the aquatic ecosystems each year, while microplastics accumulate in the soil from sewage and landfills due to the use of plastics in the agriculture products. The annual social and environmental cost of plastic pollution ranges between 300 billion US dollars to 600 billion US dollars. The source has been quoted from UNEP. By 2025, the world cities will produce 2.2 billion tons of plastic waste every year, more than 3 times the annual produced in 2009. The nature and gravity of the problems can be evaluated from the numbers. The numbers don't lie. As far as the global and Indian plastic crisis, the global ecosystem produces more than 400 million tons of plastic annually, whereas the Indian share is only 9.3 million tons annually, out of which 20% of the world's plastic waste. India generates 26,000 tons of plastic waste every day. 3.5 million tons are mismanaged and leaked into environment yearly. Our per capita per year use of plastic waste or creation of plastic waste is 8 kg per capita per year, which is low per capita but high in terms of the total volume. But only 9% of all plastic waste ever made globally has been recycled. That is one of the major reasons of the deliberations why we need to really look at it in a very serious manner. As I mentioned earlier, the nature and gravity of the problem is huge as it impacts a triple planetary crisis: the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature, land, and biodiversity loss, and the crisis of pollution and waste. So it's a life cycle problem from production to pollution. When we talk about manufacturing, 90% of the plastics made is made from fossil fuels. And an average plastic bag is used for just 12 minutes, whereas the disposal takes 400 to 1000 years to decompose. It also has a serious problem of fragmentation because it breaks into microplastics and never truly disappears. The bioaccumulation by entering into the food chain reaching the human consumption is a cause of serious concern because it poses a lot of health challenges to the human being as well as the animals. Let us now examine the environmental consequences. Not only there is a ecosystem destruction. For example, the marine life is hugely impacted. Almost 1 million seabirds and 100,000 marine mammals die annually. In the coral reefs, plastic increases like a disease by 22x. The terrestrial impact, as I mentioned earlier, soil contamination affects crop yields, and this actually has a cyclic impact in our entire ecosystem. Plastic pollution also accounts for 3.4% of the global emissions and a habitat loss for coastal and marine ecosystem degradation. So the direct impact on public health or the human health is mostly because of microplastics. The microplastics have been detected in human blood, lungs, and placenta. They have a potential link to hormone disruption and cancer. Chemical additives like BPA, phthalates cause developmental issues in newborns. We also have a lot of food packaging contamination because most of the food packaging is in plastics. Air pollution from the plastic incineration is also a serious cause of concern. In fact, in Delhi alone, there are a lot of newborn children who have been found to really have plastic in their lungs, microplastics in their lungs, which is something that we could have never imagined. So while we are talking about the health and the environmental impact, we should also look at the economic impact. There is a huge financial burden on global and India health. The global cleanup cost is almost about 139 billion annually. And India has a challenge to manage 9.3 million tons of massive scale of plastic. We have tourism losses, which is affected in coastal areas, Goa, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and also in the Northeast. Fishing industry impacts almost 14 million fishermen in India. Healthcare cost from pollution-related illness and infrastructure damage because of clogged drainage systems during the monsoons. But there is a silver lining that there is an opportunity cost because now India's recycling industry potential is worth about $6 billion. So let us understand what are the repercussions of this at both global level as well as at the national level. UN Global Plastic Treaty has been under discussions, under negotiations, and partial release of the first version has come out in 2024. Or I should say the last deliberation has come out in 2024. Based on which India Plastic Waste Management Rules 2024 have been amended with expansion of EPR coverage. EPR, that is Extended Producer Responsibility. What is expected is that the people who are producing plastic have the responsibility to really take back the plastic waste which is generated after the consumption of the products. There is also a single-use plastic ban which was implemented in July 2022 for 19 items. The EPR portal has been a centralized system for plastic packaging producers, which has a wealth of data which needs to be really looked upon. There is a thickness mandate which says that plastic bags should be minimum 50 microns, which has been increased from 40 microns. The rural extension has now been made in the municipal areas, which was only under the previous laws. The recycling targets have been set upon 30 to 50% depending on the product category by 2024-25. So the key global policy landscape initiatives under the UN Global Plastic Treaty 2024, the key takeaways for business is that one has to shift away from single-use plastics, adoption of circular economy principles, and opportunities in sustainable materials, extended producer responsibility, EPR, and market leadership in sustainability. So, how do we achieve this? We'll only be able to achieve these if we are able to have circular economy solutions, where we need to redesign the system designed for circularity, where the products are designed for reuse and recycling. There's extended producer responsibility for manufacturers, taking the accountability of the full life cycle, and chemical recycling, that is breaking plastics to the molecular level. Bio-waste alternatives, which might be plant-based or plastic substitutes, need to be identified and used more and more. The reuse model, where packaging as a service system has to be really developed. Let us now examine what are the technology innovations which are helping to provide some breakthrough solutions to these problems. One of the biggest silver lining is the plastic eating enzymes. It's a biological degradation method, so it is the most effective, though the scalability is a bit of a challenge. But advanced recycling methods for converting waste to high quality material is one of the most effective method that is being touted. Smart packaging, which is biodegradable and compostable alternatives, are the next major breakthrough. As far as the technologies are concerned, two technologies play a big role in terms of the AI sorting, by improving the recycling efficiency, and the blockchain tracking by the supply chain transparency. Now, in India, we have, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge opportunity of having advanced recycling of plastic. And we are already seeing a lot of companies who have come up and mushroomed in certain parts of the country into plastic recycling. You'll be happy to know that almost 30% of the PET bottles, the PET bottles, are being recycled, which is a huge, I would say, uh, achievement considering that almost all the stakeholders in this particular value chain and the supply chain have been integrated very effectively for the PET bottles. The advanced recycling of plastics actually take care of not just the plastic, but also in terms of its packaging and how it is being transported, to also really looking at how it is collected from the consumers and trying to really bring it back into the loop by manufacturing something valuable from the plastic. And this advanced recycling of plastics is something that is a ray of hope in the kind of situation that we are in the plastic waste solutioning. There is now a business case for action. Why should not the companies act now? The consumer demands that 83% of the consumers demand that they have sustainable packaging. There is a regulatory compliance, and to avoid future penalties, companies have to adopt plastic waste management. Supply chain resilience, if we are in a position to really develop the raw material and reduce the raw material dependence on plastics for any of the things that we are doing in the supply chain. There is a lot of emphasis that is being given currently for the supply chain resilience, and one of them is on the plastic waste, trying to combat the plastic waste phenomena. All the companies now take it as a pride for their brand reputation because ESG reporting requirements mandate them to do this. All companies who have a certain amount of target, they have to spend almost 2% of their earnings as in the ESG related activities. And the easiest method of doing that seems to be touted as the plastic waste reduction. But there is a huge cost saving by the waste reduction and the efficiency gains. So it's not just a hypothetical situation today, there is a proper business case why companies should act. So there are quite a number of success stories in the industry. Leading by example are not just the global but also Indian companies. Unilever India has a target to reduce virgin plastic use and locally sourced alternatives. Coca-Cola India has 100% recyclable packaging commitment. ITC Limited is working on sustainable packaging innovations and have come out with some very good products in that area. Tata Consumer Products has already become plastic neutral operations. Dabur has biodegradable packaging initiatives for most of their food products now. Indian Railways is also working towards eliminating single-use plastic from stations, though their in-rail plastics use still continues. The Reliance industry has made a commitment for circular economy investments in recycling to a huge amount. So when we talk about the implementation framework to achieve what we are ought to achieve, the most touted methodology is the 4R strategy: refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. But I think we need to add a fifth one, which is replace. We need to replace selectively our usage of plastic by sustainable alternatives. This is going to be a must going forward for saving our planet. So there are organizational action plans that have to be devised for immediate, that is next 30 days, and also long term, which includes the immediate steps that they need to take is conducting comprehensive plastic audit of operations, registering on CPCB EPR portal, engaging with suppliers on locally sourced sustainable alternatives, implement plastic-free meetings or events, and employ awareness campaigns in local languages. The most important is to set measurable reduction targets aligned with the PWM rule. In the medium term, that is 3 to 12 months, the organization action plan needs to revolve around achieving EPR compliance targets, which is 30 to 50% of recycling, partner with local management cooperatives, invest in alternative material R&D with Indian research institutes, and collaborate with industry associations like CII, FICCI, SHM, etc. But also engage with the local Gram Panchayats for rural implementation. So the policy and advocacy in India has been a key driver to drive the systemic change. Support towards strengthening of plastic waste management rules, joining industry coalitions, advocate for better EPR implementation and monitoring, and participate in the Ministry of Environmental Consultation, sharing best practice of industry associations, and supporting the informal sector integration, that is waste pickers, kabadiwalas, etc. Very important is to collaborate with the state pollution control boards and engage with the smart city mission for waste management solutions. Now, if done right, these can provide a game-changing way towards the targets that we need to achieve. The key performance indicators measuring impact in the Indian context. We've already discussed a few pointers in this direction, but the exact measurement impact parameters that have been set are for EPR compliance is to meet 30 to 50% of recycling targets by category. The plastic reduction year-on-year decrease from 26,000 tons per day as a baseline. The collection efficiency has to be currently, which is mismanaged to the tune of 3.5 million tons, have to be really improved. The rural coverage extension beyond municipal areas as per 2024 rules is in sight. Informal sector integration of waste pickers and their livelihood support. State-wise performance benchmarking against progressive states, and also carbon footprint measurements for emission reductions from the waste management. The economic impact is to be measured in the cost savings and the green jobs created. The path forward for 2025-2030 roadmap is to eliminate problematic plastics by 2025, 50% reduction in virgin plastic use by 2027, and implement circular systems by 2028. By 2030, we need to achieve plastic neutrality or positivity. The global targets are to have 80% reduction in plastic pollution by 2040. This is a figure which, if done rightly, and the kind of support is being given by right up to the Prime Minister, I think is fairly achievable, but for the participation. So the call to action is your role in the solution. How do you champion sustainability in your organization? How do you make conscious consumption choices? How do you support businesses with sustainable practices? And how do you educate others about plastic pollution? Participating in cleanup initiatives and voting for environmental really responsible practices is the way to go. So I'll share the resources and the next steps where we can learn more about this in a few minutes. But the most important thing is that we need to really follow what is happening in the Indian success networks. The Waste Management Association of India, the Indian Plastic Manufacturers Association, and the Packaging Industry Associations have really done great human service towards the plastic waste management and also achieving phenomenal results. I'll try to really close this main topic by saying that the best time to act was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now.